Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Marshall, and I'm the Honorary Secretary of the Royal Television Society Technology Centre. And it's my privilege to welcome you to tonight's webinar, which I hope you find both inspirational and interesting. It's particularly of interest to me as I've long been involved in student television. And of course, my background was originally producing big outside broadcast events. And on both those counts, I look forward very much to hearing our contributors tonight. If you're not a member of the Royal Television Society, by the way, it has much to offer students and early career people, and you can find out more about that at rts.org.uk. With regard to student television, for the last 20 years, I've been involved with NASTA, and that involvement started when I saw some work of the students at Loughborough and what they were doing covering a rugby match between England under-21s and the Loughborough students. I was amazed at what they were doing and the quality of the coverage they were producing. More recently, one of the NASTA students came to me and said he was interested in getting into TV lighting. Could I help? Well, I'm not the right person to ask for that, but I do know people who are. And I had a word with my chum, Bernie Davis, who is one of the top outside broadcast lighting directors in the UK. And Bernie very kindly let him go along to the rehearsal day at the Royal Albert Hall for the Festival Remembrance, which is quite a fast-moving lighting job. At the end of the day, Bernie came up to me slightly worried. He said, "Where did you find this guy? He knows almost more than I do." And to this day, that has impressed me and reminded me of the work that students do and the standard of it, which is incredible. Now, I know the project we're hearing about tonight is really ambitious, and that's tremendous. But if you said to me, what's the most important thing? It may not be the first thing on your list because everyone thinks about cameras, sound, circuits, and they see those as essential components of television, which to a large extent they are. But if you're going to do something live and big and expansive, the key thing is you've got to get it right, and you've got to get it right in the comms area, the communications between all members of the team, and particularly if they're all around the world, to ensure that everyone knows what's going on and when. So I really look forward to hearing more about this project tonight. It's a great endeavour, and more will probably be learned doing this than many hours spent in the classroom. In the meantime, thank you for joining us tonight, and I hand over to my good friend and our host, Stephen Stewart. Stephen.
Thank you, Tim. And yeah, it is going to be a very interesting evening. We're going to be looking back at last year and then talking about this year. So I'm Stephen Stewart, as Tim said. I work for Levira Media Services, and we organise the play outside of On Air. But we're going to talk about the whole chain and how it worked last year. And we'll introduce the panelists after just a short film, very short film, that will give a bit of a snapshot into what we did last year so we know what we're talking about.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn.
My name's Ethan.
I'm MJ.
I'm Jamie, I'm the director.
I'm Olivia.
Hi, I'm Callum.
I'm Bill.
So I'm Elliot.
Hi, I'm Callum.
I'm the lighting director for today.
I'm going to be vision mixing.
I'm the script supervisor and I'm responsible for the timings of the show.
I'm producing the first 12 hours of the show.
So I'm the content operator.
So I'll be running the auto cue.
And I'm also running the auto cue here.
I am sound.
Hi, I'm Lily, I'm a floor manager.
I'm Alex, I'm camera operator.
I'm Alex, I'm the assistant floor manager.
Hi, I'm Louis and I'm another camera operator.
I'm Finn and I'm social media manager.
I'm Eddie, I'm a lighting assistant.
I'm Maisie and I'm doing social media.
"24 hours is going to be nuts." We've got 18 locations across the globe, starting in Sydney, going all the way through to LA, with all of the teams producing 1 hour of live content. Here we go. It's been a good first day. they watch it on YouTube. Account you need is a Media Talent Manifesto. Please subscribe. We need as many viewers as we possibly can.
So that gave you a bit of an idea of what we did last year. So let's introduce the panel first and get each of you to talk about yourselves a little bit and your reflections on what we saw last year. So Laurissa, maybe start with you about last year's project and how it went.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Laurissa Yeung Shea. I'm the Resource Scheduling Application Manager at Warner Brothers Discovery, looking after systems across UK and Europe for TNT Sports and Eurosport. Last year was a privilege, I think, is one of the many words that we can use here. So many positive words. It's one of those things where when somebody comes to you with an idea, in this case, Carrie Wootton from Media Manifesto, with an amazing brainchild of a 24-hour live broadcast, you simply can't say no to it. My background comes from linear television, so it could lend expertise in terms of bring it to life. And I think last year it was one of those moments where it was a chance to be able to share your knowledge with our industry friends here, as well as being able to share the knowledge to the next generation. But seeing everything put together was something, I think it was just simply amazing. I know I'm going very high level here because it's one of those moments where there's so many things that happen and so many experiences that we encounter together. And we'll probably talk about them as we go along as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Laurissa. And Russell, you next. You're in the thick of it from a technical perspective. What are your reflections on last year?
Yeah, my name's Russell Trafford-Jones. Great to be here. I'm Industry Engagement Manager for Techex. So, one of the things that I'm always on the lookout for are interesting projects anywhere in the industry that Techex can get involved in, because one of the things which I think makes life fun and interesting is a bit of variety. Variety is the spice of life, they say, but is it not true? Because when we're doing our day-to-day job, I think there's so many people in this industry who are here today because they love it. And things like this, where industry volunteers can get involved, and therefore, I can go to the tech team at Techex and say, like, who's interested in being part of a 24-hour broadcast? We can do this, we can do that, and we can do things that aren't part of our day job, and that's fun. It's interesting. So, what's great about the on-air initiative is not only the first and foremost important thing, which is raising the profile of the students, but also it's a chance to allow people within the industry to do that whilst also expanding their own minds, either doing something new, which has definitely happened, or going back to an old job that you used to do. It's like, yeah, I used to like doing that. And so, it's actually, it's really good to see that that's possible to do. And, seeing that with a little bit of help from everybody, on the side of the day job, we can actually achieve a lot. And so looking forward to saying more about the technical side of what we've been up to and what we plan to do in October.
Great. Thanks, Russell. And finally, Scott, what's your perspective from a slightly different technical angle?
Yeah, my name's Scott Kerr. I'm lead solution architect in origination and distribution at Sky. Yeah, on air was quite special for me. I think it was 20 years since I had done my last student broadcast. I'm an ex-Ravensbourne student. And also my son is now at Ravensbourne, and he was also part of on air. He was producing the last 12 hours of the show. And yeah, we even did a panel together as part of on air at the alumni event. So yeah, quite an emotional time. It was very tiring, some very weird moments. I remember in the run up to the event, sitting on the beach in Egypt, preparing graphics and stuff on my laptop on the sun lounger, which is actually quite a nice way to do it. But yeah, as Russell says, it is quite nice to do stuff that's adjacent to your day job, but maybe something that's a little bit more creative. I think one of the jobs I agreed to do was create the credits, and that took me absolutely hours. I think there was about 800 people on the credits. But what wasn't included in that was all the people from all of the technology partners who helped out, who just didn't make onto the credits, who they did stuff behind the scenes. So there was well in excess of 1,000 people involved in the production. So yeah, the scale of it was massive.
Yeah, it certainly was. And last year was billed as I think it was billed as the largest student broadcast ever. That was slightly inaccurate though, because this year we're doing it again and it's going to be bigger and better. So before we get into the detail of that, let's just give you a quick idea of what we're doing this year.
In a world connected by screens, but divided by distance, a new generation is about to change everything. For one extraordinary day, students from every continent will take control of the airwaves, broadcasting live from the Arctic ice to the Amazon rainforest, from the streets of Europe to the heart of Africa, supported by the world's leading broadcasters, service providers, suppliers, content creators, and universities. 5 global channels telling the stories that will shape tomorrow. This is On Air 2026, brought to you by Media Talent Manifesto.
So, 5 channels, just a little bit of an update from last year. So Laurissa, you're at the sharp end of that. You've got all these locations and you've got these 5 channels. So take us back to the beginning. How many locations have we got this year? How many channels? How does it work?
How does it work? Okay, so we have in excess of 30 universities, I think the last count was, and it's still increasing. We had a few more come in this week. It's across the globe. It is properly global. We're going from UK to Cairo to Mumbai to South Africa to Sao Paulo. It's everywhere. And last year we were lucky enough to have enough content, enough universities to fill in one day. But now we're looking at that times 5, which is going to be impressive, I think. Each channel, so we saw from the clip there, we've got 5 channels on air, culture, sport, news, kids, and film. And all 5 channels will be 24 hours. So it means that we need 24 hours of amazing student content to it in order to be able to broadcast. We're going from different time zones from all these different locations. So from British summertime to Central European summertime to Australia to New Zealand. So all of these things we have to consider, not just the technical aspects, but the human aspects too. So things like for us, it's going to be it might be at 1 o'clock in the morning, but in Australia, it's going to be in the evening. So what is a good time for each of these different universities across the board to be able to broadcast? So some of the things that we have to consider in scheduling is when can they broadcast? We also have might have younger kids from schools and colleges as well. So their timeframes we need to consider in terms of when they'll be available, when they're awake, I guess as well. We'll be awake 24 hours. Well, maybe not this year, but there's all these different considerations. And some of the things that we'll be communicating with the universities about, we're talking about live broadcast, and so let me just rephrase that. So the live broadcast is not just speaking to the universities themselves, but we'll be talking to Scott and Russell and all the other people that are behind the scenes, and yourselves as well, Stephen, to make sure that all of this information that we're going to build is distributed and shared, and everybody is on the same page.
How are you doing it? What systems are you using, and how do you make sure that everything ties in nicely? It's like building a platform in one day, isn't it?
So it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. What we do know is we know that we've got multiple universities. We know that they will be providing an hour of content. So there's all of the different jigsaw pieces. So we're lucky enough again this year to partner with a company who's providing a real life scheduling system. So Provis Technologies came on board last year to provide a system for us to help us piece together just the one channel, and that was quite a challenge. We started off in Excel, good old Excel, but then we moved it across into a system which made it easier to understand what were the gaps were in the schedule, to see whether we needed to fill in time, whether we're using live presenters, whether we should be using promotional elements and those kind of aspects. So Provis Technologies have provided this scheduling system so we can also use it to calculate all the different time zones. So without having using our fingers and toes, we developed a tool with the vendor to be able to calculate all the different countries that we're going to have on board. And what's brilliant about it is that, like I said, it's a real life system that we use in the industry, and it's a fabulous opportunity for the students to get hands-on experience where I don't think you would really find this kind of role within university or within a degree.
Cool. We'll come back to a little bit more about the content in a bit, but let's move on to you, Russell, because we've got all these locations and the schedule is, as Laurissa said, a bit of a jigsaw. So on the technical side, it feels like more of a three-dimensional jigsaw. Can you talk us through a little bit about how that all works?
Well, in a sense, it's difficult, but we have benefited from a lot of technology which exists already. Fortunately, for the last, feels like perhaps 10 years, the industry has increasingly been sending things over the internet, and protocols like SRT have shown their worth in making that work. So what might have once been a complicated proposition of getting something back from Brisbane or Sao Paulo isn't as bad, and particularly because AWS are one of the partners. So we're able to land a feed directly from that university, encoded and sent over their internet into the AWS cloud as close to them as practical. And so there's usually something fairly close in that country or within a few hundred miles. And what that means is that then comes into the slightly more managed network, shall we say, of AWS, and they can then bring that across the world to where we're actually bringing this together. So absolutely, we've done this in the cloud, and one of the benefits of the cloud is that you can do things automatically. And you can do things just for an event. So whilst we can't just spin it up on the day, there's plenty of testing to do. It's a great place to do it. So we use Media Connect to move it from one place to another, and then by that time, what we've got 5 or 6 universities at any one point in time. Certainly last year, were online and ready and sending something. So we then bring that into some infrastructure that we've built, which allows us to switch between that. So and make sure that it goes to the right place. So what is the right place? Well, that's Playout from Levira, and the BCN Next guys have got Playout sorted. So there's a little bit of switching ahead of that. Of course, there's always a conundrum, which is how complex do you make it? It becomes difficult when you operate it, but how much of that broadcast thinking do you want to put in? Because do you want separate redundancy? Do you want 2 copies of that? How many versions of each software are you going to run? And in the cloud, there's a cost for each of those extra pieces. So one of the principles that we have is that we will do things as much as a broadcaster or media organization would do it today, so that we can kind of show all of the parts of the chain, so people can see the jobs that they might actually be able to get, and particularly those that aren't easily replicated by universities. And so it's difficult to make the call sometimes, but we do have switching. We do have the university, the host university, always on the mixer, ready to be cut to at any point. So there's a lot of that broadcast thinking in there. And then it gets switched through. So a lot of that uses different vendors, and it's really nice to have that put together in a way which we are able to quickly talk about that and explain it to students and help them understand exactly why we're doing things, that it's in the cloud, and show them how it's used. And certainly we had people visiting us on the night, and they were really interested. They stuck around for a long time, asking all sorts of questions. So one of the things we want to do this year is get that information out to as many more students as possible.
Diving into a little bit more of the technical detail, there's video standards all over the world, and there seemed to be a different standard for every country we had last year. How do you deal with the different frame rates, all the different ways that the signals can be presented? How do you deal with that in a live environment?
Yeah, well, in a live environment, it's called seat to your pants. But in a planned environment, there's a lot of work that goes into testing ahead of time. And in a sense, you shouldn't need to test, and most of the time you don't. But it's always the edge cases that catch you out, and there's only a couple of those. In reality, we spent quite a long time trying to think, particularly for this year, whether we should have it on one particular frame rate or another. And then we realized, well, it's always going to be wrong for a bunch of people. So you just have to build it. And, again, it's another compromise. Of course, you would want to put a frame rate converter in for each feed that gets routed to air, or to play out. The benefit of that is that you can switch it in at any point in time, but then you start losing losing out on compute, which costs money. So is there a problem doing that? Are you going to incur too much costs? Then also we use part of Techex Darwin is the software from Techex, which then processes it, and it goes all the way down to the elementary stream within that's coming in, and builds it up again. It does that in order to get rid of timing problems, because different encoders, different software encoders, hardware encoders, they're not always as interoperable as you'd like them to be. So this is a way where in real time it's just reclocking carefully the incoming feeds, and we found that combination works well, and any of the problems that we had last year was just because we hadn't put those elements into every stream, and I think now we've got the confidence that actually it's the way forward. So I think it's using that level of software engineering that means that you can actually rely on what's going on.
Thanks, Russell. So, Scott, coming to you, Larissa's talked to us about the scheduling and how it all gets planned. Russell's talked to us a bit about the technical side. You're right in the middle of it at the HQ. Last year, Ravensbourne, you mentioned, this year, Westminster. So what does the HQ look like? There must be so many studios and so many different technical areas. Can you just talk us through what that's going to look like this year?
Yeah, I wasn't overly concerned when I first heard that we were going to be doing 5 channels, because they weren't all going to be live, because that'd be impossible because we've only got one studio. And then I got told, actually, no, we are going to be live in all of them. And I was like, oh God, what are we going to do? Westminster is a great location. There's already some facilities there. There's a broadcast studio, so standard Gary sets up studio floor. There's also a really great sort of newsroom there, so we'll be using those. So that's 2 studios straight away. then we just need to try and find space to fit in the other three. So we're going to be having the film channel, which is going to be housed within the auditorium there. So that's going to look very, very nice. It's also where we're going to be hosting some awards, which I think Laurissa will talk about a bit later. The biggest problem is there is a film studio there, but because it's a film studio, we haven't got any broadcast equipment in there. It's essentially just a studio floor. So we're going to be splitting that into two, and we're going to build a couple of galleries, and which I believe we are putting in. We've got a couple of ideas about how to do it. One of those is potentially put in an OB van outside and running out of that, hopefully. If not, we've got an area in the Soondock where we can build a bit of a gallery. That's going to make it a little bit more complicated because obviously we will need to build stuff. We need to get that kit from somewhere. So we're speaking to a few people to arrange that. But it's very difficult until you actually design the thing and you know what we actually want to do on the night. It's a bit difficult to know who to ask. So we're very much in the design phase at the moment. I think we learned a lot of lessons from last year. I think we were building the control room probably 2 or 3 hours before we went live, Russell, last year. It was a massive room, and we had so much room to do stuff. I thought, this is amazing. On the night, it was absolute chaos, though, because absolutely everyone was in there. There were people running the channels, people doing MCR, people sleeping, people eating. So we've really made an effort to really get to know the Westminster location and look to see what other areas we can use. So we've made a very conscious effort to keep any technical areas away from production areas and eating areas. Where possible, we're looking to utilise existing edit suites and things like that. That already have the monitors and the PCs all set up in pretty much a good configuration to run the channels. Then it just becomes a bit of an exercise in speaking to the university IT team and getting ports opened up and all of that good stuff. We have started much earlier this year. I think we were talking about it, well, it was NAB last year, and then we had a few months till we went live at Ravensbourne. This year, we've had probably 6 months longer to plan it, but it's going to come around real quick. But I'm pretty happy with the progress so far. We've got engagement from the students as well, much earlier. So I think they're going to get a lot more out of it potentially than they did last year, just because the way it was an idea that came late. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, so tell me a bit more about the students. What sort of students have you been dealing with, and what's their role in the lead up and on the day?
Yeah, so we're expecting there's going to be lots of different jobs, and it comes back to that until you actually know what kit you've got, where it's going to need to go. Divvying up those jobs is very difficult at the moment. So that's why we need to get these sort of very early designs in, because then we can actually put sort of a schedule together to say, look, we're going to need some students to do this build, work with this company, we're doing that. So there's going to be lots and lots of different jobs. We're going to have Rossa bringing in some of their kit to drive the screens for the awards and the film channels. So that's going to be an interesting sort of event type job, not really broadcast, but we're seeing a lot of merging between sort of those two, AV and broadcast industries. So there's going to be some jobs around that. We're looking to introduce a bit of AI for one of the galleries as well. So again, I need to say, I'm speaking to a vendor about that, and they're like, well, what do you want? It's like, I don't know yet. But I think one of the good things this year is, as we went into the event last year, even on the day, we didn't quite know what it was going to look like. Now we've done it once, we've got a much better idea about what it's going to be like and how to structure it. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it certainly is. And from a play-out perspective, which is put my play-out hat on, last year, I was explaining to the students that in any company, and on air, we're treating it as a broadcaster. You've got all the work that everyone's doing, all the scheduling that Laurissa's doing, all the content the universities are making, all the technical stuff you guys are doing. But actually, it comes down to one point, which is the playout point, which you mentioned there, the sort of Levira using BC Next, again, cloud-based. So last year running one channel, we had a couple of students who rotated through that 24 hours. And one of them actually said that he'd never heard of Playout, didn't know what Playout was at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, when I think Viz were making a little film about the day, he was saying that the whole on-air project had changed his outlook on his career. And he realised that Playout was where he wanted to be because he loved being at the sharp end. And Tim, in the intro, he mentioned communications. Comms, sort of ClearCom have given us their communication system. And that's one of in my experience, when you're training new playout directors, one of the things they're most nervous about, bizarrely, is getting on the talkback and telling people thousands of miles away when they're on air, when they're off air, or what they're broadcasting isn't suitable, being in charge. So this student, Danis, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning him, he just loved that. So much so that when we had an opportunity, we needed somebody to come and work with us for a week in our Leeds headquarters. Danis came up and he was basically running things for a week. And the two of us who are normally there, we were in a client facility further away. So it just proves that there is that opportunity because he threw himself into it. So that works well. And so the play outside is where all the feeds come together and everything, and it's where we basically, if something goes wrong, it has to be sorted at play out. There can be all the planning in the world, technical and editorial, but something might go wrong. A feed might break, or camera might stop working, etc. But then once it's come out of play out, then so I'm going to come back to you now, Russell. How do we get it from the output of the play out control area to the viewers, to the wide world? How does that work?
Well, one of the ways that works is that we do a lot of work making sure that we're kind of scoping things down and sensibly, and I think obviously for something which only lasts a day, then we stream it onto the internet, and the world's kind of largest place that people assume they can watch something on the internet is YouTube, particularly of this length. So that's the best destination, I think, for what we've done. And we've thought of doing other things, but the reality is, YouTube's so easy to access. It has a lot of features that are beneficial to us. So that's our ultimate destination. So we've got to kind of draw a line from play out to there. Of course, with the universities around the world, I'm personally very grateful that there's so many people who do speak English, but not everybody does, and nor should they have to. So one of the things which is important is having subtitles or some other methods there, and bringing it from play out is very similar to the way we deal with the universities themselves. So it's a feed from you in play out. Because of the way the cloud works at the moment, then we do that by SRT, as if it was somewhere else. It could literally be your Leeds facility as far as the architecture is concerned, and then it comes over. So, of course, as with all kind of output chains, we have the ability to switch in a graphic. Switches, well, not 2x1s, but n-by-1 switches in the cloud are achievable in numerous ways. So I think we had two switches. One was seamless, so we can do seamless switching between transport streams, even if they're from different encoders with different content. If it's different content, then yes, the humans will notice. But the seamlessness is of the transport stream, and that does tend to break things down the line. So I'm sure YouTube wouldn't be happy if the transport stream broke up. So got that switching involved, and therefore we're able to just make sure that goes out to the right end in YouTube. And YouTube have started tentatively, if they don't mind me saying, accepting streams via SRT instead of RTMP. So we did use that last time. And I think you still have to kind of have your channel enabled in order to do that. But I've long thought that RTMP perhaps could be replaced by something else. So it's nice to see that's happening. And
a couple of acronyms there. So SRT and RTMP joint, it's for those non-technical amongst us.
Well, RTMP, as far as I remember, was invented in the 90s. Now, there's nothing wrong with things invented in the 90s. I'm not talking about people. But, obviously the Ethernet, transport streams, and TCP/IP, all of these are very long-lived technologies. But this one was a technology that was abandoned and kind of end-of-lifed, and then it was already so in use for this type of thing, reliable streaming, because it is based on TCP, and that has built in, just like the way the whole of the internet works, more or less, it has that built-in ability to send things again in case things don't work. So yeah, you're adding latency, but you've got that inbuilt ability. And then SRT is the same thing, secure, reliable transport. It's one of the most popular ways of sending live video and audio over the internet, particularly in broadcast workflows. And it benefits, similarly, it's got its own mechanism, doesn't use TCP, it's got its own mechanism to resend stuff that gets missing. And the biggest problem is missing packets. So yeah, it's really every link is SRT from beginning to end, and it goes through all of those individual pieces in the meantime.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
so
we learned.
Sorry, Scott.
We learned quite a lot about YouTube, didn't we, over those few days? Yeah, we're broadcast engineers, but we had to lean on the great Callum at YouTube a few times to get us out of trouble. Because we had to go early a little bit live, didn't we? And no one thought when I pressed the button it was actually going to work. Do you remember that?
So what were the problems then, Scott? Talk to me more about what do we learn that's going to be different this year?
I hope I haven't forgotten by next year. I can't remember what the problem was, but we just thought, should we just go live earlier? Let's just put a slate up. And I think it's just nervousness.
The main issue was the amount of time. So you don't know things are going to work because you haven't had time to test them, or you haven't had time to test them in the way that things are there. So we have built a lot more time in, but of course you can never build enough. And that's in terms of learning, for me, it's good news and it's bad news. The great news is you can achieve a lot with a bunch of people who are not dedicated to the task, and what we did is great, and use that in the largest possible sense of the word we. But on the other hand, you see how many people you do need. You see what you could have done if only you'd had 2 times the number of volunteer hours, you could say, and twice the number of students. So, of course, the logical thing to do would be to do it again and then double your resources. But what we've done is we've multiplied the number of outputs by 5. And, well, I don't know if we've multiplied the number of people by 5. That's the only problem.
Yeah. I was just been thinking about that, actually.
But no, I think we've I think with as always, if you plan things well, and we've got some very good people planning, then I think you always make the best of what you got. So I'm looking forward to doing it all over again.
That brings me back to you, Laurissa, talking about planning. So we've got these 5 channels, 24 hours, and you talked about the schedule.
Yes.
But as with any live schedule, it's not all 100% live because there's going to be inserts. So we're going to have promos. I showed one earlier on. There's going to be lots of small bits of content going across all the channels. And then there's going to be the sort of what happens when it goes wrong. There's a big contingency. So how are you managing the contingency? What content management systems, and how are you making the promos? Talk a little bit more about the editorial side.
So as part of the scheduling team, it is the strategy. So you've named quite a few sort of areas that we're covering, which I guess traditionally wouldn't fall under scheduling. So we'll start with the contingency. So on paper, we are transmitting 5 live channels. In real life, we will have to build 10 in order to make sure that we're covered. So you have your 5 real channels of all the brilliant student content, and we have asked for creativity, more creativity this time, even more, to be able to have spare content like promos, like fillers, which we can store away and we can schedule in our contingency planning in those plan B moments. So the theory is, if everything is all sort of aligned together, if anything goes wrong, we'll be able to pull out that contingency schedule, send it across to Levira, play out, and hit the button, and off we go. We've got maybe maybe 5 minutes, it may be 50 minutes in order to get our ducks back into a row again and get going. So I think that will probably be the ideal. But last year that didn't happen. For as I remember, we had our contingency plan, but instead we went off kilter a little bit, and it actually was really successful. Unfortunately, we had our first university wasn't able to make the transmission, and it was the first university of broadcast. So instead of starting an hour later or filling it with our contingency plan, we went live in the most exciting, scariest, craziest way. And I think you alluded to it earlier where we were chatting, where everybody played a part. I think all of us at one point were interviewed live off the cuff. And what was brilliant about it was that people got an insight to behind the scenes as well, because it is about the broadcast, it is about the students, but there's been a lot of volunteer industry experts who've taken part to help make this happen. So that's one part of the content. And then I guess when we talk about content as well, it's the end to end. So and it's the content being looked after by different departments. So the students will deliver the content to us, but that doesn't end there. We'll have our compliance team who will check the content we're going to be using Ofcom compliant guidelines again this year. And it was really helpful last year. We did have some cheeky content that we had to navigate on the day as well. But it helps us to, not only are we compliant, but it also teaches real life regulations and things that have to be considered with the students as well. So it was a great learning curve. Other things that we have to consider about content with the schedule is, and we touched upon it in terms of the idents and the bumpers, the branding is the whole look and the feel of the channel. And this year with 5 different channels, each one has its own home and each one has its own feel. So it's really important for us to be able to get those ideas and visually and be able to create graphics to brand them. And it's our job to make sure we place them in a pretty way, I guess is the only way I can explain it. When you look at channels like Channel 4, and I'm sure you can visualize it even on VOD content, you always have the channel brand going into the program. And now even on streaming, you have adverts in between. You'll always have branding coming in and out. So you always remember where you are. You and us who are providing the content, we remind people what you're watching and where you're watching it as well. And I guess I think to tie it up at the end here is that last piece, the last pieces of content in that stream, so that workflow is also the playlist. It's literally a shopping list of all the different content and the schedule metadata, things like time codes, things like aspect ratios, all of that is contained in that information, which is shared across the board. And with that information, we can store that content associated with it, so we can reach it for editing, to make promos on the spot is the hope this year, so that we can recapture what we've done across the 5 channels in 2026, and obviously be able to reuse it again for promoting on social media and all those kind of aspects. So content is a bit of a beast, I think, across all of the different departments.
Yeah, and that's what impressed me last year from a playout perspective. I think you're using Tanuki as the sort of the behind the scenes engine to get things both compliance viewed from around the world, but also those last minute promos. So that made a big difference. But we didn't actually have a media asset management system last year. So it was your Excel sheet. So maybe Russell or Scott, this year we do have a media asset management system, a MAM, don't we? So how's that going to work, and what difference do you think it's going to make? Who wants to take that? Russell?
I was going to leave Scott for that one, actually. No, I think how's it going to work is what we're working on now. We've got we've set up a Maria MAM, and we've started ingesting things. But obviously, half of the work of having a MAM is the planning, and so fortunately, we've just coming into May, we have still got a bit of time to plan. So we're literally working through all of the things you need to be thinking of, like naming conventions and the workflows, and exactly how you're getting the right content to the right place, or at least making it visible to the right people. So in this kind of situation, which probably isn't that different to some broadcasters, we've got a lot of people contributing, but in the core kind of workflows, we don't need them to see all of that. Not that it's secret, but there's a certain amount of management that needs to go in. So that's where we're at with that. And but the important thing is that you can't get away with the scale with that, with just Excel spreadsheets. And I think one of the things that has been clear throughout broadcasting over the last few years, 10 years plus, particularly with all the mergers, is how scale really racks up the complexity. It really cranks up the amount of planning you need to do, and kind of process driven workflows. Now, I'm not going to say that it will feel like a process-driven workflow on October 22nd, but things like making sure there's a MAM, having that planning done is what everybody needs to do, and it's what a lot of people forget to do. We're at least remembering to do it, and whether we do it well is a different matter. So this is one of those incremental things that, of course, the second time you do something, obviously we need to do that this time. So we're looking forward to benefiting from that, because that will actually make it so much easier to add in the branding elements that Laurissa was talking about earlier, some of which were absent last year just for lack of time and ease. So it just makes the whole channel feel like it's a cohesive channel that you would be watching anywhere else.
And I think last year we were maybe the first, or one of the first, to use a brand new system called TAMS, that we did the compliance recording on. How did that work from an industry point of view?
Well, I mean, the benefit of TAMS. So TAMS, first of all, just to be clear, is it's time adjustable media store. It's a new technology to allow. It's aimed at software, but obviously anything can talk to a storage device. But instead of asking for a file by name or dealing with projects, it just asks for a time. And the moment you can kind of add in that, I shouldn't call it an abstraction layer, but I think in IT terms, it's an abstraction layer of saying, I just need the time, right? It's the wrong word, because it's not an abstract concept. It's exactly what you want. When you're doing a live program, in its near live, or you're coming to edit it later, you know what the time is that you need, and it doesn't matter what it's called. And so, yeah, we tested that out really, and it turns out I didn't realize until very close to the event that because it's been created by initially by the BBC, but now by a team of people, it's you know, using it in anger. This was one of the first times it was used, well, the first time I believe, and so we were. It saved the day in a sense because it did have all the recordings of everything. We were so yeah, post play out. Techex software was writing it, everything that was going to air, and then of course when we found out, one of the learnings from YouTube was that if you've got a show of over 12 hours, it doesn't process it and then make it available on demand afterwards. And so we were all expecting it to kind of magically appear a few hours later, and it didn't appear at all. So having it recorded on Thames was absolutely perfect. It was already in the cloud, and John Biltcliffe from AWS put in a sterling effort cutting it up, and then directly putting it from AWS into YouTube. So I think one of the things that we lacked was a lot of student help to do the post-production, and and also while we're doing the shows, to be making like highlight reels and things like that. So there's a big effort to make sure that we get a lot of people hands-on with Thames this time round. We're definitely going to use that again. And I think you only have to go to any of the shows or just look at what webinars have been on in the last 6 months to see that, Thames has definitely got the industry interested. The new opportunities that it opens up, and we've seen the benefits for sure. And I think, going back to the subtitling idea and the dubbing, making sure that after play out, we're still generating a channel in English. We're also looking to experiment, so to speak, we're the ones experimenting, but how do we plug in an AI translation or dubbing system just so that we have that kind of English option, because it is tricky, because you don't want to kind of change anyone else's program, but on the other hand, if everything for 24 hours is in English except for like 3 things, then it's difficult to make that a channel that's cohesive. So it's an experiment. There are challenges, but on the other hand, it's the perfect time to be doing that. And I think the industry benefits quite a lot from this type of endeavor, because individually we're benefiting, as we discussed, by doing different things, by learning more. Students are as well. Obviously, all of the vendors who are involved are able to bring things back into their company, but also get exposure. So that's great. And then also to be able then to carefully, in just 1 or 2 per year, have something which pushes the boat out, which doesn't collapse the whole system if it doesn't work, to experiment and prove that the new ideas coming from the industry itself are workable, helpful, and are real. I think that's everybody's benefit.
So, Scott, hearing all of that, you're at the sharp end in your day job, and you're at the sharp end in this job. What that you've just heard from Russell, what keeps you awake at night thinking about the on-air project?
Nothing at the moment, because we have got lots more time. I did have a couple of sleepless nights in the run-up to the last one. I think we're much better prepared this year. We've got more students on board. We've got more volunteers on board as well. Nothing yet. Nothing Russell says scares me. You must try harder.
It's become immune.
You could try much harder.
Yeah.
Ask him in 2 days before TX.
Yeah. 2 days
Yeah.
after TX. So I think you mentioned it earlier, Scott. There's going to be the film channel in the auditorium. The other thing that's going to be happening in the auditorium, I think you mentioned it as well, Laurissa, there's the awards. So last year, the students from around the world, from all these locations, they made some amazing content. So much so that the on-air team decided to set up a bunch of awards. And of course, we have to do them live, a la BAFTA style. So how's that going to work from a scheduling point of view? But also, what are the awards, and how's it all just going to work?
So the awards, we've got 7 awards this year, including, and I should say it's a celebration of the students from 2025 that took part. So we have, to name a few, we've got Outstanding Student in Role. So a student who's excelled in their volunteer role in 2025. We've also got Best Technical Production, Best Student Storytelling and Innovation, and an Innovation in Broadcast. So that one in particular, I find quite interesting because it's about the students who have introduced the most creative ideas or the format or the use of technologies to push boundaries. So it's a real range of not just the technical production side, it's the aesthetics, it's the editorial as well. We're starting small this year, and I think going back to what Scott said, we had over 1,000 people take part last year. So I can only imagine the judges that are taking part in looking through the awards, how difficult it's going to be. But really, it's just a moment just to take a chance to reflect back and also to thank everybody who's sort of taken part. But there are going to be some key people that we want to sort of celebrate. And in terms of scheduling, I won't reveal it just yet. We're still in planning mode, but we want to make it a big deal because we want to celebrate what we have, what we had last year. But moving forward, hopefully we'll have even more celebrations and more awards. But at this moment in time, we've got 6 awards that are up for sponsorship as well. So I may as well plug that. So if we have companies out there or individuals that would like to sponsor one of the awards, now is a great time to contact Media Talent Manifesto and get on board as well.
Brilliant. So as we round off, we've got a couple of minutes. So maybe just 30 seconds from each of you about what your hopes and dreams are for this year's 24 hours. So let's start with you, Scott.
I think more of the same. I think one of the most important things for me was for people that work within the industry to feel a bit more approachable to people who are just starting out in the industry. I think that definitely worked this year, so we want to kind of double down on that. Yeah, more of the same. Not too much more the year after, though.
48 hours?
No. That was my son's idea. No.
What about you, Russell?
Well, in my view, what I'm doing and within my little area is doubling down on making sure that students can get involved in the central kind of technical area. We talked very briefly about comms earlier, and we've scoped down the way that programs talk to each other to reduce the amount of comms, but on the other hand, you can't reduce the amount of comms needed in playout, in MCR, etc. So it's an absolutely brilliant place to be able to show some students now those things. So we're going to be upping our game to make sure we can get as many in as possible. And so more student engagement as much as possible. We can't all be in the same place, but we can all be part of the same program.
Cool. And last but not least, Laurissa.
Hopes and dreams. So this moment in time, I think it just shows that anyone can take part, no matter where you are in the career pipeline. For me, at this moment in time, it's already sort of coming true, the opportunity to be able to pass on knowledge and to be able to share that to people who are willing, and to sort of like knuckle down and sort of take part as well. That's been a real dream come true for me. I've got two kids, and for me, it's to show that men, women, any background can take part. We can sort of like, get together and do this, and it's just and I guess for me also, it's me wondering in the future, and I've spoken to my the scheduling lead Sarah as well about this, like maybe like 20 years time, when this is continuing, maybe the students will be offering us a volunteer position so that we can learn the next innovation, the next version of TAMS, the next version of scheduling.
That's a great idea. That's a great way to end it, I think. So no, that's fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I think that's given everyone a really good idea of what we're doing. And just to remind people, if you want to find out more details, as Laurissa said, Media Talent Manifesto is there. So go and follow the YouTube channel, and you can see all the stuff from last year as well. And the most important date is 22nd of October. 5 channels, 24 hours. It's going to be crazy. But thanks for tuning in tonight, and hope to see you on the 22nd of October.